Good morning, everyone. My name is Starla Dawn, and today we're going to be adding to our bullet journal for mental health. Last time we added the index and the introduction quote, and today we are going to do a wellness plan. A wellness plan outlines things you can do to take care of your mental health. We'll start with the prevention, so things that you do routinely to stay in a good mental health space. And then we're going to do some red flags or triggers, that how do we know that things are going bad. And then the last thing we'll do is interventions. So if things are bad, how can we get out of it, or how can other people help us get out of it? You can really do anything that you like for your wellness plan. The first one for prevention, I'm going to do sort of like a mandala. The great thing about your wellness plan is that it's going to grow and change as you grow and change. I like doing the mandala because you can always add more to it as you go. The preventions that you put in are going to be unique to you. You might share some of mine, but your preventions are going to be different. Some of mine, I need to keep around positive media. I have some Facebook friends that have a hard time staying positive, so I needed to unfollow them, especially if I'm not doing really well with my mental health, then I need to make sure that I'm really around positive media. I don't watch the news because there's hardly ever anything positive on the news, things like that. I have to be creative regularly. To spend time with my family and friends. I snuggle with my pet. His name is Peanut. I need to make sure I'm reading, and again I keep it positive. With my trauma history, I have a hard time reading books that have trauma in them, so like crime books or mystery books or things, especially if there's like surprise trauma. I can't do that, so I try to keep to the young adult books as best as possible, or reading books about mental health, wellness, things like that. I need to make sure I'm eating healthy and listening to music. My sweet spot for sleep is 8 hours. If I sleep less than that or more than that, it's not good. I need to color or draw, shower, drink water, make sure I'm taking care of my teeth, journal, of course, making sure I'm getting my fill of funny videos, and some kind of exercising. And I have a couple spaces that I'm going to add to later. Some other examples of preventions are having a routine, having visual aids, maybe self-affirmations on the wall, or a checklist of things that you need to do. Warnings for transitions for students, regular play or free time for children, taking medications, taking deep breaths, praying or meditate, having choices or clear behavior expectations for children is a pretty big one. Checking in with a support person regularly, that could be a spouse or a loved one or a good friend. And you can also add into your prevention plan to avoid certain things. The next thing we're going to do is red flags or triggers. So I decided to cut out a little shape from an index card so it would be more uniform. There we go. So the red flags and triggers are, the question you want to ask is, how do I know that things are getting bad? So for example, if you start feeling depressed or the anxiety is higher, any kind of symptoms that are unique to you, not singing along to songs, not doing self-care, being quiet or withdrawn, feeling like nobody cares, being hyper aware. That means being constantly aware of your surroundings and kind of like you're on high alert all the time. Feeling hopeless or helpless, having low self-esteem or feeling unimportant. A lot of negative self-talk. Losing interest in goals, not doing any of your preventions. Self-harm or thoughts of suicide is a red flag. Zoning out, having trouble concentrating, not having enough energy or feeling tired, feeling emotionally dysregulated, whether that's anger or sadness, sudden crying, feeling fearful, jumpy, or paranoid. Those are all examples of red flags. Kind of the cool thing when I started my wellness plan is I had it in the back of my mind. So as I went throughout my day or my week, I would often find things and realize, oh yeah, that's a red flag, or that's a trigger, or hey, this is something that I do almost all the time and it helps me to feel good. So I added it to my preventions. Triggers are things that cause you to start not feeling mentally well. It can be a flashback. It could be people yelling, arguing, fighting, watching something in a movie that reminds you of something else that happened, getting picked on, not understanding, not being understood, feeling alone, being criticized, losing, or feeling like people aren't listening to you, feeling like you've been disrespected, being late, things like that. The reason why we want to know what our red flags or triggers are is so that we can be reminded to do our interventions. The purpose of this book is to stay positive, and these seem kind of like negative things. This is the only negative type of thing that I have in my bullet journal because it reminds me to do good things. So when I'm feeling not great, I often don't know why or what's going on, so I'll review my red flags and triggers and kind of do a mental health check-in to see where I'm at. And it was kind of cool because the other day I didn't feel all that great. I was feeling super stressed and I didn't really know what was going on, so I reviewed my red flags and my triggers, and I actually didn't have a lot, and it kind of helped me put into perspective that what I was feeling was normal. I was having a meeting coming up and it was really stressing me out, and it helped me actually calm down because I didn't feel like I was going into that dark place of depression. In my own personal bullet journal, I ran out of teardrop shapes and I ended up just writing in the spaces in between. The last thing we're going to do are interventions. You want to have interventions that you can do, because when you're feeling really in that dark place of depression or really overwhelmed with PTSD symptoms, or the anxiety is super high, it's really hard to think clearly and come up with ideas on how you can get out of that space. So having it written down is really helpful for you to remember to do them. The only way that any coping skills or tools or your wellness plan is going to work is if you practice it when you don't need it, so that you can remember to use it when you do need it. So on the interventions page, you want to have interventions for yourself. Then you also want to have interventions for a support person. Especially in the beginning when you're first starting to use your wellness plan, it's good to have somebody to support you. So if they notice some red flags or triggers going on with you, they can do some interventions or remind you to use your wellness plan. So when you think of interventions, you want to think of coping skills or anything that you can do to help yourself feel better. Sometimes it's good to look at your red flags or triggers and think, what would I do to get myself out of that? So if you're feeling depressed, maybe going for a walk will help, or taking a shower. If you're feeling hopeless, positive self-talk would probably help. Having thoughts of self-harm or suicide, calling a crisis line would help. They also have a crisis text line that is super helpful. There's also a ton of mental health apps. The only thing I want to say about those is just to make sure you look at the reviews carefully. When you're doing interventions for your support person, make sure you include things that you don't want them to do, because sometimes they feel like they're helping when they just make it worse. So if you want to talk to them about things without them trying to fix it, then put that in there. Or if they might even notice some things that work well for you, or some red flags or triggers that they notice that you wouldn't even think of. Sometimes it's hard for people to talk when they're really in a bad place with their mental health. So you can do some kind of cue or give some kind of hand gesture to your support person, and then let them know what you want them to do when they see that. For example, you can text them a picture of a certain animal or a certain statement. You can give them a hand gesture, those kinds of things. When you're doing interventions for yourself, try to add something to do with your social support, whether it's friends or family, maybe going out or calling them or sending them a nice message, those kinds of things. If you have any coping skills that you really like to use, include them in the interventions. I included Take 5 grounding exercise in mine, and that's something that we're going to add to our bullet journal at a later date. The last thing that you want to do is go back to the index and add your wellness plan to the index. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you are worthy and you are loved.